You know, back in the 60s and 70s, I was a disc jockey here in LA at KPPC FM, which was one of the most progressive underground stations. I built a pretty considerable record library. And that's what these episodes are going to be about. I'm going to pull records out of the collection. I'm going to talk to you about the record, about the artist, and about the memories associated with it. If that sounds interesting, please consider subscribing and tell your friends. In the meantime, are we ready to start pulling those albums? Okay, let's drop the needle. You know, albums were considered art forms. The artist would agonize over the playing order of the songs. Since you generally listen to an album all the way through, the playing order was important to create the mood the artist envisioned. As I say, albums were considered artwork, not just for their music, but also just in their cover art. So in this series, to illustrate my memories of the artists and the albums, I will be showing you the album covers and pictures from my albums. These are all from my personal collection. I will not be playing any pieces of music from the artist, as those are readily available online. In 1963, pop music looked like this. The #1 hits were Telstar by the Tornadoes, Hey Paula by Paul and Paula, Walk Like a Man by the Four Seasons, He's So Fine by the Cliftons, Surf City by Jan and Dean, My Boyfriend's Back by the Angels. Not bad music, actually, but something new, something fresh, something foreign was about to invade us. And interestingly enough, this is a case where when the band had their debut record, it wasn't one album, it was two. Okay, the first album that we're going to look at is on a rather obscure label, VJ. On January 10th, 1964, this album was released, introducing the Beatles. Now, I looked it up, and you can find it on eBay anywhere from $29.99 to $9,950. But just a week later, radio stations were filling the airwaves with this new music from a band with a kind of funny name. I Want to Hold Your Hand, the first major single by the Beatles in the US, hits on January 18th, 1964. It's an instant and huge success. Here's the original 45 record. Look closely at the photo sleeve. This picture of the Beatles has been widely published, but for this release, Capitol took time to airbrush out the cigarette that was between McCartney's fingers. Here's the original photo, and you can clearly see that cigarette there. 2 days later, Capitol Records releases Meet the Beatles, and this is the mono pressing, on January 20th, 1964. It features Robert Freeman's iconic picture of the Beatles' heads in black and white. Again, I looked on eBay, and Meet the Beatles is available from $16 to $1,200. So 2 debut albums from the Beatles out at the same time. Which one is better? Is it the VJ or the Capitol? Well, Capitol certainly spent the money, and they did a lot of promotion, so they want you to think that, of course, that's the best debut Beatle record. But the VJ record kind of holds its own. That being said, the VJ album appears cheap. A not very inspiring photo of the band, and a tag on it that says England's #1 vocal group. There are no liner notes or other pictures. The Capitol release, on the other hand, has that great cover shot. And then on the back, another picture of the lads in their collarless suits. There's only one song that appears on both albums, and it's I Saw Her Standing There. Now here's the rundown. If we look at introducing the Beatles on VJ Records, side 1 starts with I Saw Her Standing There. And then Misery, Anna, Chains, Boys, and Love Me Do, which actually is not on the record, but it's listed on the cover. When you turn the record over, you'll see again that this was a rushed job, where the cover says P.S. I Love You is the lead-off track. Like Love Me Do, P.S. I Love You is not on this record. It's replaced with Please Please Me. Baby It's You, Do You Want to Know a Secret, A Taste of Honey, There's a Place, and Twist and Shout. Now let's take a look at Meet the Beatles on Capitol. Side 1, their hit single, I Want to Hold Your Hand, followed by the smash, I Saw Her Standing There. This Boy, It Won't Be Long, All I've Got to Do, All My Lovin'. Side 2, the opener is Don't Bother Me, one of the first songs that George Harrison recorded that he wrote. Little Child, Till There Was You, Hold Me Tight, I Want to Be Your Man, which Ringo, of course, gets to sing, and Not a Second Time. Personally, I like the Capitol record better. All the songs are Beatle originals. Where on the VJ album, a lot of them are cover songs. These are songs that the Beatles had been playing live. And in fact, over the years, all of the songs that are on the VJ label have been released on subsequent Capitol Beatle records. Just a couple of weeks later, on February 9th, 1964, the Beatles appeared live on The Ed Sullivan Show. And just like every household in America, our TV was on The Ed Sullivan Show, and I sat there mesmerized by what I was seeing. In some of the episodes, I'll tell you stories of meeting the artists. So, did I ever meet the Beatles? Unfortunately, no. But I do have some stories. In July of 1964, their first feature film, A Hard Day's Night, came out, and I knew that I had to see it. But there was a problem. I didn't have a driver's license, and the only place it was playing was in a drive-in theater. Well, I convinced my mother that she needed to drive me and my girlfriend to the drive-in theater to watch A Hard Day's Night. The first time I got to see the Beatles live was August 20th, 1965 at Comiskey Park in Chicago. Now, this is the ballpark where the White Sox play. It's not necessarily in that good of section of town. Now, as I recall, the stage was on second base, and our seats were in the bleachers kind of between third base and home, and part of the view of the stage was blocked by a support beam from the stadium. But we didn't care because there they were, the Beatles. After the show, it was impossible to catch a cab. So what do we know? We went, psh, that's okay, we'll just start walking. Well, you remember I told you it wasn't that good a part of town. Anyway, we got about 2 blocks from the stadium, and all of a sudden these 2 thugs saw us and figured we were easy marks. And so they approached us, and one of them grabbed my friend Jack and pushed him into the street. And as he fell down, they looked at him and said, "Give us all your money." And being very cool for a 15-year-old, he looked up at him and said, "I ain't got no money, sonny." And I thought we were goners. But at that moment, a car comes speeding around the corner and almost ran over Jack, which scared the 2 thugs away. I pulled Jack off the street, and we took off running down the block. We just laughed about it. But then we were young. The next time I saw the Beatles was about a year later, August 12th, 1966. This time they were playing the International Amphitheater in Chicago. Now this is a big, dull, indoor arena which is right next to the stockyards. So the neighborhood smells like manure. So a friend of mine and myself took the train again and took a cab, but we had plenty of time to kill. So we decided to go downtown Chicago and go into the theater that was playing Help, the second Beatles movie. And we sat through it 2 times. And I had my little brownie camera with me. And so during the movie, I would sit there and take pictures, which were kind of illegal stills, I guess, of the movie. But I had pictures of the movie, and I was real proud. When we got to the amphitheater, our seats were not that good. Basically, the stage was elevated, but the seats were all folding chairs, and they were on level ground. So the minute the Beatles came on, everybody was standing on the folding chairs to be able to see them. This is the actual program from that tour. I picked it up as we went into the amphitheater. And if you open it up and you get to page 3, you can see there next to John is my handwritten notes of every song they played during the concert. The lead off was Rock and Roll Music, sung by John, followed by She's a Woman, sung by Paul. If I Needed Someone, sung by George. Day Tripper, John and Paul together. Babies in Black, John and Paul. I Feel Fine, John and Paul. Then I distinctly remember John Lennon saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. McCartney's favorite son." And at that point, Ringo, George, and John walked off the stage, leaving Paul alone. Paul pulled up a stool, pulled out an acoustic guitar, and played Yesterday. Then the other 3 came back and they continued on. They followed Yesterday with I Want to Be Your Man, with Ringo singing, of course. And then Nowhere Man, John sings lead, and Paperback Writer, the lead by Paul. And then to wrap it up was a rather ripping version of Long Tall Sally, and again the lead by Paul. And then they were gone. I seem to remember they were on stage for about 20 minutes. Back in 1964, watching that Ed Sullivan Show, I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted a guitar. I wanted to learn to play music. And I wanted to be a Beatle. Please check out my companion YouTube channel, The World Is My Location, and How to Think Like a Cinematographer. In the meantime, here, in the next episode, the memories and the music will continue. Until then, keep a rockin'. Most of the albums that I talk about can be found at your local vinyl store or on eBay. Individual songs most likely are on Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Music, or even some on YouTube.